Hey guys, welcome to Prophecy Roundtable. I'm your host, Douglas Hamp. Looking forward to yet another exciting time. We have a special guest tonight. I'm so excited to introduce Heather in just a minute. We're going to be looking at Revelation chapter 12, right? Lots of exciting stuff in there. We're going to look at the week's midpoint. That's kind of our topic. All right. So if you have questions, make sure to throw them in the chat. And I'm looking forward to jumping in as always. And, you know, our goal is to know God better. Our goal is to understand the end times to the best of our ability. And, of course, we want to learn. That's what we are here for. And so I am really excited. Heather, welcome. We are so glad that you're here. I understand you're a fellow Michigander. So, you know, you can tell a Michigander when they get out their map. Like I'm from
right here.
If they don't pull out a map, they're not from Michigan. Clearly they don't know.
Right. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I do want to start off by saying that I am so pleased and excited to be here to discuss Bible study. It's my favorite topic ever. And I have been looking forward to this since it was scheduled. And I thank Joel very much for the outreach. So just very excited to be here and to discuss this. And while you did make the comment that there are diversity of opinions, and we, I think, experienced that very greatly, specifically in this chapter, this is actually one of the subjects that is very near and dear to my heart. And I hope that as we expand this discussion and talk about this, we'll realize that it's very near and dear to all of our hearts. And that is the gospel of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, the good news of Jesus Christ, and that he is going to return one day. And there is, in my opinion, no better news than that. You know, the hope for everything is our Lord.
Okay, we're done here.
I know, right? We agree.
We so do. Well, you know, and that's what this is all about, right? I mean, yeah, we can argue about some of the details, but we're all excited about the kingdom of God, right? That 100%. Is the focus. We're excited about our King. He's way better than any of us can imagine. He's really awesome. Here's what I'm excited about. He doesn't get bogged down about our pet theories, right? He doesn't think, oh, well, Doug is so right about that. God is on God's team, right? God is on God's side. Remember when Joshua had just crossed over and he encounters, right, Jesus, right? And he's like, hey, are you with us or with our enemies? He's like, no, I'm the captain of the Lord's host. And then Joshua's like, oh, and he just bows down, right? And that's what I think we always have to constantly remind ourselves of, is that God isn't on my side and he's not on your side. God is God, all right? And insofar as we conform ourselves to his will, to his perspective, to his truth, to the truth, good, right? But when we start thinking, well, you know, because I voted this way, or I think this, or I believe in this doctrine and I don't like that doctrine, therefore God's on my side, that's when we really start getting into trouble, right? And so, yeah, we're excited about the return of Jesus. We're excited about our King. Obviously, the Bible is our authority, but the challenge is that we all read it, and then the moment we read it, we have differences of opinion, right? And so we're trying to hash those out. We're trying to figure that stuff out. So we're glad that you're here to give us some enlightenment.
Go, Scott.
I was going to say, I think Heather's got the biggest fan club ever. I'm seeing so many.
Oh, man. Who do you know?
I'm not on YouTube. Do I need to be on
YouTube?
I'll say hi to my subscribers. They were all so excited to come over here. So, yeah, I should.
And I wanted to amen what Doug just said, especially for your audience, because they've never maybe listened in. Sometimes, and we the three of us are friends, and we actually, I like to call it quibbling. And we're joking around a lot with each other because we know each other. But so for your fans, if there is some quibbling, and that's what I like to call it, I think it's more about how we quibble and differ with one another.
Look at all my subscribers here. Hi, you guys. Gosh, they're all here.
Wow.
So go ahead and bring us in, Heather.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where do you want me to start? You want me
Wherever
to?
you
want. Well, there's a great portent in heaven. Start with that. What's that great portent in heaven?
Well, what I want to do is kind of give you just a tiny bit of background about where I even became interested in this conversation at all, because I think that tells a little bit of the story too. And it also kind of helps to address the elephant in the room, which is the theories that have not panned out that are still very much pervasive about this sign in the heavens. But I actually came into Bible prophecy in 2012. And some of the very first things that I was confronted with had to do with the fall time of year as specifically relevant to things that people were looking for, and this sign. Now, back in 2012, that was a period of years before, 2017. And there was a consensus, I would say, at that point that Revelation 12, where people were trying to pull this from, was midpoint of the 70th week. It didn't come until after we had passed a point calendar-wise where that became impossible to keep that thought, because we had progressed past, say, spring of 2014. So we were within that 3.5-year period where people said, okay, well, I still believe that September of 2017 is relevant, but I can't make it mid-trib now. I have to make it maybe beginning. And that's where they started really taking this, I would say, in a different direction, and kind of reimagining even the concepts of justification and being born again and things like that. So in 2017, I sat down and I said, I don't like where this conversation has gone, so I'm going to research this out. And maybe it's true and maybe it's not, but I'm going to research it out and see where we go from there. So what I did in 2017 was, and I will say that if I direct anyone to, say, charts or resource material or books, 100% of these are free resources on my academia page. I would never say you have to go buy my work. It's all for free. So just in saying that, I did create a resource material called, what was it called? For that is determined shall be done. And it actually started by addressing all of the midpoint events amongst the different chapters in the book of Revelation, backed up to the locust army, went through the book of Joel, and ended up talking about the 70 weeks as far as Leviticus 25 is concerned. And what I wanted people to understand through that resource was that, no, it is in fact mid-trib, and we can justify this in a couple of different ways. So here are these couple of different ways. If there were people seeking some other alternate explanation that was being provided. And that was really where it started. And so what I did at that time was I created specific resources, charts, to give kind of a visual aid of the side-by-side scriptures that align with what I was, teaching at that time, but what I had come to understand of Revelation 12. And on the whole, I would say from top to bottom, it's all mid-trib. And I think that there is, I have observed a willingness to cling to a specific idea because of something that people really wanted to be true a period of years ago. And confirmably, we can say that it probably wasn't, but there's still kind of a desire to want it to be. And I understand that. But I think when we go to Bible study, regardless of agree or disagree, is we have to look at the text, and we have to, at least my research method is to allow the text to interpret itself. I believe that it will explain itself, and our job is to search it to find those answers. And I think that's part of the fun part, is to try to find where those are. And so what I have available to talk about tonight are a couple of the different reference materials I created to show the side-by-side parallels and how we can validate with scripture that that is mid-trib, specifically from top to bottom, starting with that Revelation 12 great wonder.
Can I ask a question real quick? So when you're saying mid-trib, you are referring to a 7-year tribulation
Daniel
period.
70 week.
And then the gathering, or the harpazo, or in nomenclature, I call it the little R word, the rapture, being mid-trib.
No.
So during the middle of the 7-year period.
So what people associated that event to was the rapture. I in no way, shape, or form associate it to the rapture. And so I believe that scripture tells us that it relates to something else altogether, and that something else is the preaching of the everlasting gospel. There are two things that are revealed. The first is the visual representation, but there's an audio representation, or an auditory representation, which is Revelation 14, 6, and 7, the great angel flying through the midst of the heaven, preaching the everlasting gospel. So there's actually a key in 1 Timothy 3:16 that says, without controversy, great is the mystery of godliness. And the reason we pick that up is because in Revelation 10, it says, in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished or revealed as he had declared to his servants, the prophet. So there's actually a text, a verse that tells you specifically what the mystery of God is in 6 different points. 4 are found in Revelation 12, 1 through 5, and 2 are found in Revelation 14, 6, and 7. And when you merge them, it places it at the midpoint by virtue of Matthew 24, 14. So I'm going to, if you want me to present one of these, I can show you the text side by side. Is that, are we there? Are we not?
You would need to go hit the present button down below, and then click on it, and then find that particular screen if you have a second screen working, or if it's your main screen that you're sharing. And if you can't, Doug will just do filler in the meantime, because he can do that. And so, does anybody have Matthew 24:14 handy?
And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then the end shall come. So
we all know it well, but we don't know every verse. So there you go. Hey, Heather's ready to go. Okay.
So this is the Revelation 10:7 verse, which says, in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished or declared. There we go. It shall be finished. And that's just revealing the mystery. A mystery is just, there are several in the Bible. Fullness of the Gentiles is one. The mystery that not everybody shall sleep, but will all be changed. The mystery of God revealed through Christ, which is what we're talking about here, the life of Christ. And so there are several different mysteries, but it's simply something that wasn't overtly stated in the text of the Old Testament that the New Testament is giving the details for, more or less. So 1 Timothy 3:16 gives you the point by points of that. And should I make this bigger, or are we good with the size of that?
Doug, what do you think?
Bigger, that's great.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a six point revelation of that. And it says, without controversy, great is the mystery of godliness. God was manifest in the flesh, justified in the spirit. So then you have the first part of the Revelation 12 great wonder, saying there was a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. So that's clearly talking about his birth, which is a reference to the first 2 points of that mystery of God. Next is scene of angels. That's going to be another part of Revelation 12. There appeared another wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, 7 crowns upon his head. His tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven, did cast them to earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Next, here we have the integration of the Revelation 14 angel preaching, because you have preached unto the Gentiles, believed on in the world. And this is where you have the intersection of Matthew 24:14 also, because it tells you that comes directly before the abomination of desolation and the subsequent flight of the remnant, which I will say you next see the flight of the remnant in Revelation 12:6. So that also underscores the proximity of this being the preaching of the everlasting gospel to that event. But basically what you see is the intersection, like I said, of Revelation 14:6 and 7, where I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people, which is preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. So he says, fear God, give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven, the earth, the sea, and the fountains of waters. And then you have the final point of those 6, which is received up into glory, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. So that is where I start the conversation, is that is actually the revelation of the mystery of God, which we are told would occur at the sounding of trumpet 7. And that is, like I said, it's a merging of the visual and the auditory representations with Matthew 24:14 to tell you where it's at, which is right before the abomination of desolation and flight of the remnant. So that's where I start that conversation. And there's also a secondary reference in Psalm 2, but I will stop there and let you guys comment or give feedback.
Are you doing the rod from Psalm 2? Is that what you're likening it to?
So there's a couple of points of specific reference in Psalm 2 that find counterpart in that Revelation 12:1 through 5. First is the birth of a child, which in Psalm 2 says, yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. That's actually Revelation 11:15, which is where the sounding of the seventh trumpet actually occurs, says the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ. He shall reign forever and ever. Thou was taken to thee their great power and hast begun to reign. Take that over to chapter 12, verse 10. Now is come salvation and strength, the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. So you said, now have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. When you next see Jesus in Revelation 14, he's got a crown on his head. He has not yet to that point had a crown on his head in the book of Revelation. So that's a reference to a further exaltation of him for a specific purpose. I won't get into that yet or at all, but then you continue on in Psalm 2. It says, I will declare the decree. The Lord has said, thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. Well, that's exactly what that sign is a representation of. It starts with the birth of Christ. He says, ask of me, I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Again, you're talking about kingdom and the Revelation 11 description of trumpet 7. And then, of course, to your point, Joel, you said, thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel, which is also part of that Revelation 12 great wonder. And then you have the conjunction also of the Revelation 14, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship Jesus, your creator. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you perish from the way when his wrath is kindled but a little, which Revelation 16 is the vials of the wrath of God. Blessed are they which put their trust in him. So you actually have a kind of a twofold explanation here. Psalm 2 to help explain the Revelation 11:15 through then the carry over into chapter 12. And then also the 1 Timothy 3:16 to talk about the conjunction of the preaching of the everlasting gospel and the two ways that will be done. So I think it's definitely talking about mid-trib, and I think Matthew 24:14 helps us to understand that. Because then, like I said, in Revelation 12:6, the very next verse, you're talking about the flight of the remnant, which is exactly what Matthew 24:15 through 22 talk about. So that's how I come at this. And I do understand that there are a great many people who have interpreted this to be the rapture. I am not one of them. And I was never in that camp because I see something totally different. And I will say that I like that it's not there because I think, and this is just my own interpretation, but I think it takes something away from talking about the exaltation of Christ, talking about the gospel that's preached of Christ and kingdom to try to make it about the church. I feel like it takes something out of that conversation. And I personally just don't really like that. It's like, give Jesus his credit, give him his due. Okay. It's all about him. And while I understand that there are other people who have different opinions, for me personally, I just feel like it loses something when you make it about some other group of people than it's actually about. It's like, leave it about Jesus. It's about him. It's about his exaltation. Okay. It's about the time when he's going to be preached and the world is going to have a choice, believe in him or lose your life. I mean, one of two ways. People are going to die physically, die spiritually. There's so much implication to that. And I can get on a tangent talking about this. But I do believe that
well, you guys have heard this a lot. Our audience has. So this is more for Heather. I'm gonna put it in a question format, and for your audience. But in Revelation 12, it talks about the rod and the scepter. Have you ever considered that in Revelation 2, starting with verse 26?
Oh yeah, for sure.
The one who overcomes and the one who keeps my deeds until the end, I will give him authority over the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, as the vessels of the potter are shattered, as I also, Yeshua speaking, have received authority from my Father. So again, when I see that rod there, I'm looking at bridle, not necessarily the whole house of Israel. I don't believe in communist heaven. In other words, but there is going to be
probably good
for the overcomers, for those who have cleaned up their garments, for those who have obeyed Revelation 2 and 3, in other words, that particular remnant, and by no means do I look in the mirror and go, I would ever choose me. I wouldn't choose me. So, why in the heck would Yeshua ever choose me? Because I know all my dirty laundry and he knows it more than I do. But I just, when I see that rod of iron in Revelation 12, now I immediately go back to Revelation 2, and I don't believe, and I'm in the minority. I don't believe that man child that's born was or is Yeshua, because nothing fits. I
Nothing.
believe that man-child is, and they all disagree. But that's
Yeah,
okay.
I've heard
That's
that
fine.
too. And I will say that it actually led me to write a separate book going through Isaiah 66, the nation born at once. And because there's a convolution, I think, I don't know if that's a bad word to use or not, but I do think that there is a convolution to the concept of justification and spiritual rebirth, when that occurs, how that occurs, who it impacts. And I think that has been in order to, like, talking about a corporate birth event for the church, and there's a corporate redemption that people talk about, but that's a physical redemption, not a spiritual redemption. Spiritual redemption is individual point in time when people believe. And so I just feel like that it kind of distorts context a little bit, but I have heard that. What I will say to your point about Revelation 2, and I think that this is answered in Revelation 4. In Revelation 4, there's a group of 24 elders that have crowns on their heads. Now, I am of the opinion, I have taught and I have researched, that is the royal priesthood that Peter speaks about in 1 Peter 2. They're seen casting their crowns before the throne in heaven, because in chapter 5, they're singing a new song that says, we shall be kings and priests unto God, we shall reign on earth. So they don't have their crowns in heaven. They will get them when they go back to earth. And they're noting that they're going to reign exactly nothing in heaven. So they're casting them before the one who does reign in heaven, King of Kings and Lord of Lords on the throne. So what you're seeing in Revelation 2 is a preamble to the time they will reign, which is on earth after Revelation 19. So Jesus has to assume a reign in order for him to share it. What you're seeing in Revelation 12 is an exaltation of him to a place where he then 3.5 years later is going to come back as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And I say a further exaltation is he's in Revelation 11, it says the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ. So there is an exaltation that occurs at that time, and he is taking to him a position that he will then come back with authority and judge later. At that time later is when we will be kings and priests unto God. And reign on earth. So I think that what you're seeing in Revelation 2 is a foreshadow of what will occur in kingdom. But you also have to consider the fact that there is a group of overcomers presently. There will be overcomers in the 70th week. And in Revelation 20, it plainly states that those who are resurrected as trib saints and martyrs in that first resurrection, because there's 2 in the chapter, they're going to be kings and priests and reign on earth also. So you would have to put that Revelation 2 overcomers as inclusive of us now and them later, to all do something later after the fact. And that's after Jesus returns for kingdom. So I do absolutely agree with you that is something that we're promised. But the receipt of that promise is, I think, where we differ. And that will be kingdom later after he returns.
Yeah. And again, we would be quibbling literally. And because I was born and raised pre-trib rapture, was dispensational, said things like, tribulation saints. I mean, again,
back when you were smart.
That's what I grew up on. I read it, I learned it. Now, and I got to be where I was I wouldn't even say the rapture word, but I will say this: in Revelation 12, there actually is the word harpazo. Philip was harpazoed from point A to point B. Paul, or a guy he knew, was actually harpazoed. And this Revelation 12 man-child is harpazoed, whereas Yeshua ascended.
He actually didn't.
He wasn't violently snatched away.
He was.
It doesn't necessarily mean violently snatched away.
Yeah, no. So
we disagree with Scott.
Yeah, I
thought your answer was brilliant.
discussed this. Well, it's funny that you say that, though, because in my For That Is Determined Shall Be Done book that I wrote, that it's a free resource on my page, by the way, I actually talk about the Greek language, how it appears in 1 Thessalonians 4, how it appears in Revelation 12:5.
Say the word,
and how they
can't
the
say
same word at all. Yes, it's the same harpazo root.
So
the actual words themselves are not even remotely close.
We know that about. Doug wrote a book on that on 1 Thessalonians 4:17, that the word is actually not harpazo.
Oh yeah, it's Peste or something like that. Yeah, it's the language, the tenses, the genders, the plural, singular, masculine. It's all different. But I will say that I actually just talked about this when I was finishing up the book of Luke on my channel recently, and he did not ascend up to heaven slowly. He was carried. He was taken. And Luke says this too. He was carried up to heaven.
Wasn't harpazo.
Well, he did ascend, but there was something else involved.
I warned you, Heather. I warned you.
Well, no, it's funny. No, it's cool. I was going to have this conversation, then I thought, no, but it's so interesting because in Acts, when Jesus is getting ready to leave, he obviously leaves, and then there's those two gentlemen who are standing there and say, "Why gaze ye up into heaven? He's going to come in like manner as he left." Well, Jesus doesn't, descend slowly. He comes on a white horse and chariots of fire. So how do you think he left? Not in a slow ascension by himself, just like, hey, look what I'm doing kind of thing. Luke said he was carried. And Acts 1, Luke also said he was taken. So I mean,
there's said this, Heather, by the way, I don't necessarily think that the man-child is harpazoed and remains up in the throne. I believe the man-child has a mission to accomplish here back on earth, to your point. Not that we're just up in heaven having a party.
No.
No, I believe the man-child is sent back down, actually, sort of like Paul was harpazoed and sent back down in 1 Corinthians 15, and he actually remained mortal as he finished his mission and his commission to go out to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Let me just say this from Revelation 19.
The man-child comes back too, and it's Revelation 19.
This is the topic that Scott likes to go to. But in Revelation,
we're in Revelation 12.
I know, but Revelation 19 says,
Heather.
"Now out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, and that with it he should strike the nations,
and
he
rule them with a
himself
rod of
will
iron."
rule them with a rod of iron."
Yeah, what's that rod of iron?
The winepress of the fierceness and the wrath of Almighty God.
Yeah.
So that's Jesus. I mean, that's clearly Jesus.
But what's the rod of iron?
Revelation Shevet Barzal.
It's talking about Jesus. And so I think the point here is that, and I think Heather explained it beautifully, is that Jesus first has to receive the kingdom, and come in that authority, and then he imparts it to us as well. And I completely agree with that. So I am of the persuasion. I agree with you, Heather, that Revelation 12, the male child is talking about Jesus.
Yeah.
Etc. But we still love Scott. It's okay.
We do. I appreciate the difference of opinion, because honestly, I think that when you truly seek answers and you are truly trying to understand what it means, disagreement is good because it helps you think about things you might not have otherwise thought about, and helps you be able to strengthen or defend an argument. And so I appreciate that. I might not happen to agree, but I do appreciate it because it's given me things to write about, and I like writing. So,
but you're linking 14 with 12. You're saying they're both midpoint, and there's a lot going on, and there's not only receiving the kingdom, so to speak, but there's also proclaiming. The three angels, we could call them, are going out and proclaiming.
So
you're linking
a separate chart that discusses midpoint. I know I like charts. It's because people like visual aids,
Yeah, I know.
I am not necessarily all the time a visual person, but I understand that people are. So if I can help create a visual aid, Revelation 10 previews mid-trib by talking about in the days of the voice of the seventh angel. And that finishes Revelation 15. So what I did was I created a chart of all of the events that are prophesied in those chapters and how they relate. There's significant relationship. When I was writing about this in my study, I wrote one chapter that's about trumpet 7 and encapsulated Revelation 11:15 through Revelation 15:8 and showed how all of the events are in parallel. They're either sequential or they're in parallel, but they all deal with the same things. And so what I did was I put that in a chart.
I totally agree. Revelation is written thematically and not chronologically. And
I think there's something to be said for both of those things.
It's probably both and.
Yeah. There's some chronological, there's thematic.
I
agree with that.
Chronological.
I'm not totally
In its overall orientation, I believe it's chronological, but I do believe that there are parts of it that are not. And so this is kind of what I did was I said, okay, Revelation 10 is amidst trumpet 6, but it previews trumpet 7. Revelation 11 is amidst trumpet 6, and then it changes into trumpet 7. So you have similarities. Trumpet 6 is actually talked about at the beginning of Revelation 11, at the beginning of Revelation 13, and at the beginning of Revelation 14, because you see the redemption of those people It was the cloud that the two witnesses were caught up with, and they're standing on heavenly Mount Zion with the Lamb. And then everything else is trumpet 7. So just to kind of give like an overall, here's how I see it, and here's how these relationships show. This is all trumpet 7. And there are so many things going on during that time. So this is actually on my page. I'll stop sharing it now, but this is on my page, and it is called Revelation's Midpoint Chapter Events. And so that's how I think those chapters lay out. And I think it's hard to separate writing about them because there's so much overlap. So I didn't try. I didn't try.
Yeah, if anybody says Revelation is an easy book, they have never tried to go through it.
No, it's challenging, but it's a fun
I taught
challenge.
through it. It took me 16 months to get through it. It's a lot. I mean, there's a lot in there, and you can literally teach the whole Bible when you're teaching the book of Revelation.
Yes,
you know, that's one reason we have so many different viewpoints on it, is that we're all coming with our own baggage. We're coming with our own, issues with this whole thing, and so you really have to go back and address these things like Reformed theology or dispensational theology or preterism or whatever thing that you hold, whatever your ism is. You have to kind of deal with that when you're trying to get through the book of Revelation. And then, of course, what things are chronological, what things are thematic. Do we have reduplications, we're coming back to a theme.
Sure.
And so it's challenging to say the least. And of course, there's tons of symbolism, right? And so one thing I'm really curious about is Revelation chapter 11, because I also think that's the midpoint. Mm-hmm. So I think 11 and 12 are both midpoint chapters.
11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
I'm not disagreeing.
And parts of 10. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just, 11 is dealing, because again, where I see as a theme, chapter 11 is dealing with the two witnesses.
So okay. You're talking about temple and two witnesses. Okay, sure. Yes.
So that's the theme in chapter 11. And obviously they get their 1260 days.
Yep.
And then the beast comes up, kills them. That would be the midpoint. And then he gets 1260 days, which we really see in chapter 13, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And then of course,
the abomination of desolation is in
12 is about the woman and her children, let's say, that make their way out to the wilderness, etc. Mm-hmm. So they're all talking about the same basic time frame, but there's three different characters, if we will. So
and Revelation 11 is important for a lot of, they're all important. Say it's important for this reason, they're all important. But that introduces people and places that have been there but haven't been introduced. And so it's telling you why they are now important. Mm-hmm. Trumpet 6, because the two witnesses lose their lives, the beast descends at that time, who's going to become relevant to the second half. The temple, because it's going to be desolated at the midpoint in Trumpet 7. So I think that's interesting too. When you look at the original references to that, the two witnesses, Zechariah 4, they are linked to the physical temple. Amidst the building of the second physical temple, you have the two olive trees and the two candlesticks which stand before the God of the earth.
We love that. We love that subject.
The four horsemen are also linked to the physical temple in Zechariah 6. So what you have is topics that haven't been introduced, but that have been there, that are now being introduced because you're to understand relevance at that point in time amidst Trumpet 6 and Trumpet 7. I actually link Seal 1 to the temple. And there are lots of reasons for that. But that's where I would link that. So
can I Bible trail you off? What would be your current understanding of the two olive trees? Who or what are they?
The two olive trees and the two candlesticks.
The two witnesses are the two menorahs, the two lampstands, and the two olive trees. And I'm in your studies, have you ever done a deep dive on the olive trees?
No, it was simply just to understand that the imagery is to represent those two and that they will recur in the 70th week.
If I may, look at Zechariah 4. Yeah. And you've got the two olive trees, and then Jeremiah 11, 16, and 17, where you have a singular green olive tree, one being the house of Judah, what we know as the Jews, And you mentioned it earlier about the fullness of the Gentiles, and you have the house of Israel, the house of Ephraim, and Ephraim is blessed to become the fullness of the Gentiles. Israel was divorced, swallowed up by the nations, lost her identity. And we're only now in the past 20, 30 years understanding that when we are grafted in that singular tree, we are Israel. We don't replace the Jews. We don't replace Israel, but we are Israel.
So then how do you differentiate between the natural branches broken in if they continue not still in unbelief and the wild branches grafted in?
The broken off branches right now would be out of covenant, widowed Judah, not in covenant, just as divorced Israel was out of covenant until the husband, Yeshua, came to die so we could enter back into covenant, because the house of Israel, not Judah, was divorced.
But wouldn't house of Israel and house of Judah still both constitute natural branches?
No. The house of Israel was completely out of covenant in Jeremiah 3 and divorced.
Because God said that they're not my people and I'm not their God.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
So there was a complete breaking off.
Sure. But what I'm saying is the Gentiles, as far as I've studied this, is the Gentiles are the wild branches grafted in.
We
Contrary
agree.
to nature,
Yeah.
versus the natural branches who are Israel. So when you're talking about the dichotomy between Jews and Gentiles,
of Israel, Hosea 8:8, was swallowed up by the nations. In other words, totally lost their identity. And when Yeshua is talking to Judah, saying, "I have other sheep, not of this fold," he's talking to the house of Judah. He's referring to the scattered, divorced, lost sheep of the house of Israel. This is one of our big. We love to talk about this.
The fullness of the Gentiles, through my research, manifests in Joel 3. The fullness of the Gentiles is the grape harvest, the treading of the winepress. It's wicked. It's Gentile judgment, not Gentile salvation.
Okay, we would definitely disagree.
Yeah,
yeah.
So let me just back up if I may. So because I understand some of this language that sounds like wah, and it didn't make sense to me some years ago. Okay. I wrote a paper, Why God Did Not Elect Calvinists, and I was suggesting that the Jews were the chosen, and this person in the comment section said, "Hey, why don't you make a distinction between the house of Israel and the house of Judah?" And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I just assumed everything that I had heard was that Jews and Israel were the same thing. Okay. And so it took many years to discover otherwise, that when God divorced the northern kingdom of Israel, he said, "Lo ami, not my people." And he said, you're not my people. Okay. So get out. He said, "I will no longer show mercy to the house of Israel, but I will show mercy to the house of Judah." All right. So once you can make a distinction between the two houses, and that really much of the Bible is about the restoration of the two houses. And so then,
Ezekiel 37, one stick. Or
I'm thinking about that. And so when I talk about this, I talk about this as God not giving the house of Judah a bill of divorce, even though she wasn't any
No, he did
better.
Not. She deserved it, but because
the reason
David,
he didn't was because a house divided against itself cannot stand.
No, because of David. He said that because David was faithful, he made promises to David.
Yeah, sure, exactly. And line of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, was going to come to redeem all of Israel. So a house divided against itself cannot stand. You don't separate yourself from yourself, which is essentially what he would have been doing if he did it. Judah.
He read Jeremiah 3, and he did it. In Hosea 1 and 2, he did it. He totally divorced the northern kingdom out of covenant.
Judah and Jerusalem.
And he sent them into the Gentiles. All right. So the house of Israel was like a drop of wine into a glass of water. Okay. You take that drop, it goes into the water, it's dissolved, it's diluted. Right. And so now where did it go? It went into the mixture. Okay. So the Gentiles then become the potential, let's say, for anybody who believes out of the Gentiles. That would be me. Okay. So I was a Gentile and I now believe in Jesus. And so now I am no longer a Gentile, as Paul says in chapter 2. Right. I'm now grafted into the commonwealth of Israel.
Sure.
All right. And so that's where we're seeing that the fullness of the Gentiles is not Jesus judging the Gentiles, but the fullness of the Gentiles. Because that term that Paul is using in Romans chapter 11, he's taking it straight from where Jacob put his right hand on the head of Ephraim instead of the head of Manasseh. And he said that he will be Melo HaGoyim. He'll be the fullness of the Gentiles. And so then Ephraim became a nickname for the northern kingdom of Israel, right? So there's a lot of threads that we have to
Sure,
go
no,
through.
I
That's
understand. I'm just
yeah,
going to agree to
okay.
disagree on that,
Hey,
but that's
hey,
totally
Yeah, let's
fine.
go Revelation 12.
Totally fine.
And Heather, just by the
Yep.
way, until 2017, I thought only the Jews are Israel. We're the church, and never the two shall meet, because that's what I had been taught since I was a little bitty boy.
No, gotcha. No,
No, I'm
Okay,
serious.
so-
of believers,
I
be
would
they
fight
Jew or
you.
Gentile.
I would think you're talking replacement theology if I heard this the first time.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay, so Revelation 12,
Yeah.
we've got a sign in the sky from 2017, and you kind of believed it. You were watching it, but then it just didn't pan out. And we're in 2025 now, so obviously it didn't work out. So are you looking at another window going forward? Are you saying this could play out again? I mean, every fall, you're going to look at Virgo recline in the sky. The sun will be behind her head, the moon at her feet. Every fall, Rosh Hashanah. So where do you think things are at?
So I, yes, have a timeline. I didn't know
Okay.
how much you wanted to get into that specifically, but this goes to the underscoring principle of Daniel's 70 weeks and what they were predicated upon. There is a legal command given in Leviticus 25:8 to number 7 sevens. And that is why Daniel specifically called out 7 years and 3 score, or 7 weeks and 3 score and 2 weeks, is because he's pointing you back to Leviticus 25's weeks of years. What we understand about the importance of that is that Leviticus 25's weeks of years began to be established when Israel came into the land. That's bookmarked to Joshua 4:19. They came up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month and camped in Gilgal on the east border of Jericho. 4 days later, they kept the Passover. Then the manna from heaven ceased. 7-year conquest for the land of Canaan, etc. So that Joshua 4:19 date is important. And Daniel's telling you that that Nisan 10 date is going to be important in his weeks of years. This is observable in all 4 data points given of the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. You're given Nisan or Nisan 10 in all 4 of those data points. Agree or disagree? I understand that there's so much contention about fall. I totally understand that. But my research has borne out that weeks of years, the 70th included, because it is simply a week in a prophecy that uses the same method of counting 360-day years, all of them starting in the month Nisan. If you build the timeline of 7 based on Nisan to Nisan 10 specifically, then your fall is going to be exactly where you think it should in this sign in the heavens in Tishri.
So tell the people what happens on Nisan 10.
Nisan 10 is the selection of the lamb.
Yes.
Israel didn't do it. Well, technically they did. Nisan 10 was forward looking to the Messiah, the Prince. That was kingdom offering number 1. That was when they could have gone into the kingdom and they rejected Jesus. He did 4 things in the immediate outset of that. Nisan 11, he cursed the fig tree for not bearing fruit. He prophesied 70 AD as a recompense for not knowing the time of their visitation. Means they should have known. He cast blindness over them for not knowing the time of their visitation, and he delayed the kingdom. Did you never read in the scriptures, the stone which the builders rejected, the same is made the head of the corner. It is the Lord's doing, it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore, I say unto you, the kingdom of God shall be taken from you and given to a nation bringing forth the fruits thereof. Represents the delay of the kingdom. In the interim, people have asked, what's the gap between the 69 and the 70? It's the delay of the kingdom. There will be a second earthly kingdom presentation on the same day, because that's the day upon which is reserved for weeks of years, according to my research. So the commencement of the 70th week of years will be a Nisan 10. Which Nisan 10, then people ask, because could be any, right? That's where you tie in Jubilee to it. So there's a whole set of research that I have on that to show from the beginning to the end how many there will be, how to count, forward looking to Nisan 10 of, if 1406, then 2025. I know, right? Good
Oh,
timing.
you're going 2025.
Yes.
Okay.
Makes God
Yeah.
happy. There you go.
Gavin would
Oh.
love you. Gavin's
That's-
looking for something major to
So
happen
what you're
on Yom
saying,
Teruah.
so understanding that the 70 weeks are based on 360-day years, which we understand from Revelation and Daniel, which they both measure the second half at least in 1,260 days, times it in half, 42 months. So since it's one prophecy that uses the same method of counting all the way through, then we would infer the same of the first 69 weeks of years and the 70th. So if you're operating on a 360-day calendar, Nisan 10 plus 3.5 years is Tishri 10. The Day of Atonement is the day upon which presumably Israel would have to choose to flee or not. I think that there's significant spiritual and physical implication with that. However, if you're
So you're suggesting, just to be clear, you're suggesting that the midpoint is going to happen in Tishrei. That's interesting. I would put it just the opposite, quite frankly. I would suggest that the return of Jesus would be in the fall. And,
Joel 2:23.
Yeah. Okay.
Says the former and the latter rain are coming back in the first month. The sister passage of that is Hosea 6:3. If we go on to know the Lord, his going forth is prepared as the morning, he shall come unto us as the rain, as the latter and former rain unto the earth. That's Hosea 6:3. And then in Joel 2:23, it says, be glad and rejoice, ye children of Zion, rejoice in the Lord your God, for he hath given you the former rain moderately, talking about his first coming. And he will cause to come down for you the rain, the former and latter rain in the first month. And then it talks about the restoration of Israel, people, land, all of that stuff in kingdom.
So what do you make of Jesus dies on Passover. He's in the tomb for unleavened bread. He rises on first fruits.
Yeah.
The Holy Spirit is given on Shavuot.
Yes.
Wouldn't that strongly imply that the return of Christ, his second coming, would be in the fall, and that would happen on trumpets? And then, of course, I would think that Matthew 25, the separation of the sheep and goats,
Yom
the whole
Kippur
judgment thing would happen on Yom Kippur.
Sure, and I've
then
heard
God
that
dwells
too.
with us in Sukkot, right? I mean, it seems pretty simple.
Jesus was born under the law to redeem the people from the curse of it. And Galatians 4, I think 4 says that. So when we look at the law, Colossians 2, 16 and 17 is a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. Hebrews 10:1 says the same thing, that the law pointed to, it foreshadowed. It was a way for them to recognize Jesus. So operating under the knowledge, like you just said, about Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, and Pentecost, we say, how did the other three point to him also? Jesus was born on the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles. John 1:14 tells us.
I mean, we don't know.
I believe it was
we
Yom
do.
Teruah.
But we do.
Heather, Jonathan Kahn makes a good argument for Passover. I personally believe it was September 11th, 3 BC, which was Yom Teruah, when kings of Israel were crowned.
Gotcha.
Others make great arguments for tabernacles. I will say 100% dogmatically, he was born on a Moedim. He was born on one of his appointed times. So that's what we're really talking about right now.
Yeah. So the way that I have researched this, and I do believe that there is absolute support for this, but I do understand that people disagree. So fine.
Yeah.
Tabernacle.
I'm not dogmatic.
He was born under, the word became flesh and dwelt. The Greek word skenu, which means to have my tabernacle. The tabernacles was forward looking to God dwelling among men. And this was evidenced during the transfiguration. When he appeared in glory with Moses and Elijah, Peter said, are we supposed to make booths? Because he thought kingdom, God dwelling with men, that's what they were supposed to do, is celebrate that time in booths. Also, the waving of the palms wasn't during tabernacles, but that was kingdom. Hosanna to the Son of David, Hosanna in the highest. They welcomed him with palms, celebrating kingdom. So we look at tabernacles, and first day, solemn assembly. There was an 8th day tacked on to as a solemn assembly also. That was Jesus being born under the law and Jesus being circumcised according to the law to take on him the seed of Abraham. That was given as a commandment to Abraham in Genesis 17 as a token of covenant acceptance with Christ, that he was to have all males circumcised in his house. And then from the 8th day going forward, written into the law in Leviticus 12.
Wasn't that a sign of the land? I mean, wasn't circumcision about this land is yours and this circumcision is a sign thereof? Well,
potentially,
a little bit,
but it was also a requirement to partake of the Passover. I mean, it
we're
was
not
given as
necessarily correcting because or challenging because
yeah.
you're a guest, but
Yeah, no, it's fine.
but
I mean,
there's small little things that like I'm like, yeah, okay. Like I think the law is pretty good. I don't think that Jesus came to do away with the law. And this is what Scott and I were talking about, and Joel, of course, about the whole thing about the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And I know for those of us that listen to us on a regular basis, we can sometimes be that broken record, but this is a huge thing, okay? Because from Genesis chapter 12 to Revelation 22, the story is about, well, of course, God, but Israel, all right? It's about Israel.
yes.
And it's not really about the church. It's about Israel, how Israel was one nation, how Israel was a broken nation, how Israel was married to God, and then 10/12 of her was cut off and sent out to the nations, and then the restoration of that nation, and then putting them back together, and then God and Israel getting back together. Okay, so that's in a nutshell what the story is all about. All right, and those of us that have come out from the Gentiles were like, wait, who am I? Okay, and then we're like, oh my gosh, you mean I'm part of Israel? This is really cool. All right, and so understanding these things does change how we think, these different things. And so the feasts become a really big deal. And I'm fine if Jesus was born at Sukkot. I don't care. It's fine with me. But, but the point here is that there's little nuances that we can take a look at, and they are going to change our course and where we end up ever so slightly, I think, which, we may want to talk about those things just a bit more.
So I understand exactly what you're saying about Israel, and I 100% agree with what you're saying about Israel. I simply have a disagreement that the Gentiles are part of Israel in some way. I think that they are separate and distinct, and I think that's where we diverge. As I think that
what about Ephesians 2, though, where Paul says you formerly, he's not talking to a Jewish congregation. He is writing to a congregation which is of the nations. He specifically says, you formerly of the nations, you were without hope. We all have hope now. Yeah. You were without the covenants of promise. Every Christian would say, we now have the covenants of promises. You were excluded from citizenship in Israel. But now you are no longer aliens. You are no longer strangers. You are fellow citizens with the hagios, with the saints of God. And so in that Greek word, if you search it out, Paul is using that same word or root word when he says, I am a citizen of Rome. In other words, I'm not trying to say that the Jews are not Israel. I'm just saying that right now, all in covenant are Israel. And at the very, very end of this age, in Zechariah 12, you only see the house of Judah being mentioned. All nations, all ethnos, all goyim are gathered against the house of Judah, and specifically against Jerusalem. You will not see Ephraim mentioned, the house of Joseph. You will not see the house of Israel mentioned. And then Judah looks to him whom they pierced, and they mourn and they cry out, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.
I don't disagree with any of what you're saying.
Israel is then saved. Their belief, Judah's belief, per Romans 11, is the resurrection from the dead. We want Judah to corporately put their, look up in it. It says, when Paul talks about I think it's around 11 or 12, it was the Romans 11 olive tree that God used one day to go, oh my goodness. Yeah. Oh my goodness, I've been blind to this. It's not just those poor Jews that have been blind to Jesus. I've been blind to the fact that Genesis through Malachi applies to me today and how I live my life. And so that's again, nothing other than resting on Shabbat, honoring his Moedim, and not eating certain animals has changed in what my daddy taught me as a Southern Baptist deacon. Nothing. I don't keep the law because I'm saved. I keep it because he says so.
Sure. No, and I agree with a large part of what you guys are saying, just not all of it. And that's okay. That's okay.
Revelation 12.
Yeah.
So, let's go back. So there was a sign in 2017. You looked at it. You said it doesn't quite work. But correct. Now it seems like there has to be a future sign. There has to be something else coming up, right? And will it look like it's described in Revelation 12?
Well, so I don't see why it wouldn't, because it's basically given as a heavenly sign. I mean, the first half of that chapter is regarding the second heavens, so the celestial heavens where the sun, moon, and stars are, and then you have the war in heaven and Michael with his angels warring against dragon and his angels, and no place was found anymore, and they cast them down to earth, and they can find them there for the second half of the 70th week. So I think there's no reason to suspect that there won't be another manifestation of that sign. And based on what you're saying, and the point that you made to me when we spoke beforehand, was that is in the heavens the same time of year every single year. And so I operate on a Nisan 10 through Nisan 10 4 weeks of years, which would put midpoint in the month of Tishri on a 360-day calendar, specifically Tishri 10. But if you're looking at Gregorian calendar and saying, okay, Nisan 10 of 2025 is April 8th. So add 1,260 days. That's September 19th, and that takes you to Elul 28, which is 2 days before Rosh Hashanah.
What year? Of what
2028.
year?
2028.
Okay, 2028. Okay, all right.
So
that's your midpoint.
Yeah. So I don't think that conflicts with what you're saying of when that sign would appear every year. I think that's probably why it's put there, because I'm going to guess that the Jews would readily expect or understand that imagery.
So you think
your dates are in the wiggle room ballpark that I have long believed that Yeshua is returning 2 days after he returned to his place, meaning 2,000 years, with the earliest possible year that I've, my calculations, my studies, 28 AD, latest 33 AD. That's the window. 32
is where I put it.
Yeah, that's in the window. Okay. Some people are dogmatic. It's 28. Have you seen Messiah 2030?
I have not.
You ought to watch it. It's excellent. It aligns a lot with what you're teaching. A fellow brother of mine, I can't reveal his name, produced it. Very well done. There's a reason I can't mention his name, because he's trying to reach Christians, and he actually teaches about the Shabbat and the Moedim.
Okay.
And so he's intentionally not trying to make them go like this.
Sure, I understand.
That's what'll happen a lot. I don't want to hear this Jew stuff.
Yeah, it's the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem. That text is actually mirrored specifically in Nehemiah 2:5, which is given as the 20th year of the reign of Artaxerxes in the month Nisan. When you convert that to a 360-day calendar, 69 periods of 7, that takes you to April 6, 32 AD, which is triumphal entry day. Unto the Messiah, the Prince, is Nisan 10 Palm Sunday.
Gavin would love her, because it sounds like just right out of Sir Robert Anderson.
It is. That's where it started.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I had read it before.
And then, yes, to your point, 2,000 years. When you look at the Jubilees, do you want me to bring up another chart? You can't want me to
bring up another chart. Yeah, that's fine. At least we're staying on topic.
All right.
Because if they're 50 years and you multiply 40, which is a time of judgment, you end up with 2,000.
Right. So there's actually...
You do.
So it's actually a period of 40 Jubilees. And I literally just talked about this going through Mark 1 and 2. It was the last book in the New Testament I haven't taught on my channel, and I started it the other day. Jesus began his ministry by fasting for 40 days. And then in Mark 2, it says that there's going to come a point when the bride will fast without her bridegroom. And that is, in the type and shadow that he set, a period of 40. Yes, I understand that people count by 50s. It's technically in the 50th year, which means current year plus or minus 49. But we're not splitting hairs here. Let me find where this is.
And you have given birth before, and it's about 40 weeks of pregnancy, right?
Yes.
When I did, it was
only long time, I will say. Okay, so I have a chart called Biblical Events Overlaying World History. And this actually is a comprehensive chart of so much information that I am not even going to remotely go through all of this right now.
Okay.
Because it's not... Yeah, it's just not. So let me let me share this.
Wow. Sounds really cool.
I have so much. So much. Okay. So this is where my chart starts, is the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem in the 20th year of the reign of Artaxerxes Longimanus, which historical records put in 465 BC. Now, we observe that we're supposed to be looking for a fall-to-fall calendar, because In Nehemiah 1, the 20th year of his reign includes Kislev. And in Nehemiah 2, it includes Nisan. So the only way that works is if you're operating on a fall-to-fall calendar. So I have assumed that, and I have accounted for that. So the 20th year of his reign would be answers to March 14th of 445 BC. Operating on a 360-day calendar times that period of 69 sevens, you come to down here, April 6th, 32 AD. So then you back up 3.5 years. He would have started his ministry on Tishri 10 of 28 AD. But 32 AD is where I put that. So then I have this really neat type and shadow thing here that I'm not going to go through, but gosh, it's so interesting. Did you know that the book of Exodus, from the giving of the law on Sinai to the parsing of the lots to the tribes in the promised land in Joshua, provides a precise overlay of world history and type and shadow. Anyway, what you're looking at is Jesus's ministry was housed.
We lost it. Put it back up again.
Oh,
yeah.
Did you lose
Doug?
it?
I think Doug went full screen. So Doug, if you could pop it back up.
Well, now she took it off.
Oh, you lost it. Right.
Okay. So this is Jubilee timeline. You can take it back to creation, but you're not supposed to start from creation. So that's kind of what I did. But anyway, 1406 is when they start. Nisan 10 of presumably 1406. I have a separate chart that has a whole bunch of data points that we can confirm this as close to accurately as possible. And I say that because I wasn't there. And since I'm never going to be able to independently verify it, I have to trust the information that's available in historical records. But there are 70 jubilees from start to end. The final jubilee, the 70th jubilee, would be if 1406, then 2025. And then you have the 7-year conquest for the land of Canaan, after which it will rest from war. The lots will be parceled to the tribes in the kingdom, which is what Ezekiel's end times vision ends with. So from the time that Jesus had his ministry, which would have been between the jubilees of 16 AD and 65 AD, 65 would have been the next one, and there are a period of 40 without him. So you've got your 70, your 40, and your 7. Those are really, really important numbers in the book of Exodus, which, like I said, provides an overlay of world history and type and shadow. So that's kind of where we start with, is counting the jubilees as plus or minus 49 to get to the 50th. There will be 70 from start to end, plus 7 for the 70th week. And there are 40 since Christ left.
And the 50th is not part of the first Shemitah of the next cycle. The 50th is a separate year, right?
It is not. It is the first year of the next 7.
Oh, you do that. Okay, so you're a Biltz fan. Okay, whether you know him or not, but that's how he does it.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Jonathan Kahn is a 50-year person, totally separate.
I see.
And the next Shemitah would be separate.
I want to say it's Leviticus 26 that clarifies that. Talking about... Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I want to say it's something from Leviticus 26 that clarifies that. So yeah, 7 sevens, and then in the 50th year, hallowed and proclaim Jubilee. And I do put that as the first year of the next 7 sevens.
Interesting.
Well,
okay.
I don't think clarify is the right word, but yes, that's where you can go and find proof for your side of the argument.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are fights within us,
Duly
calendar fights and
noted.
things like that. Yeah.
It's all good. I mean, it's all good. Wow.
It's
So
good research.
just to clarify, you really think that this year is the beginning of the tribulation? Is that what?
Yes.
Okay.
If 1406, then 2025. That's how I say that. If 1406, then 2025.
Based on 49s.
Okay. Well,
And
we'll see if you're right. And so by this
and
April, is that where we're gonna get started, or in the
yes,
fall?
my birthday actually.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
Here's, happy birthday, end of the world.
So
there you go.
what is your birthday?
Destruction on the world, but
what day in April is your birthday?
April 8th, 2025. That would be that date. So it's just kind of funny. They're like, yeah.
And you turned 39 then.
45 would be my 45th.
You don't have to say that. That was a
but
joke.
I'm okay. Like I feel like I've earned my years.
30. So
she can.
No, what's actually interesting about that, and I'm actually glad that you brought that up, Doug, is the differences in counting, because one of the things that I did on the charts with the different data points was I located 2 additional Jubilee years to make sure that I have my count correct. because you can say, here's a starting point, and then you can use any way to count to an end and find whatever end. So the real challenge there was to identify other biblical events in biblical jubilees, because if they plot on the timeline, then
okay, that's good.
It's harder to say it's not. But then it's also, are you sure they happened in Jubilee years? Ezekiel's vision was given in a Jubilee year, and that's one of the data points that plots. So that was kind of built into the double check system. Is great. I can say any year was a beginning, and I can say any way of counting is fine. But if I can find corroborating evidence that also plots on the same timeline, then I would feel more secure in saying maybe.
I love your scientific approach to this. I think it's awesome. Certainly what I try to do as well. But we still have differences of opinion. Here's a comment we got. We do see Judah no longer battling Ephraim in Isaiah 11, but that's right before the 1,000 years. So I guess Genesis Designs wanted to share that.
A rod out of the stem of Jesse, a branch shall grow out of his roots. Talking about Jesus, with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. Great chapter.
Indeed, but he's also going to gather his people right from
yes.
Right. And so we see, I think his point was that we see both Judah and Ephraim
being gathered.
Like
and that jealousy and that vexing will then cease. Until then, we're still going to have this tension. Like even some in Messianic Judaism right now will still look down upon those who they still treat as Gentiles and not as citizens. And then some in Ephraim, you get these Hebrew uprooters that end up, and I am not one, that end up hating all Jews and being jealous of Judah. Because again, I do believe that Judah, not necessarily every person that claims that they're a Jew, but Judah 100% they are chosen and they have a role in the redemptive plan.
Oh, absolutely.
Their corporate unbelief right now is fulfilling prophecy. What has happened to Judah, sadly, at the hands of the Christian church, is their brother has actually fulfilled prophecy by keeping the house of Judah desolate. Your house is left to you desolate. And so sadly, Yeshua prophesied over Judah. Your house, he wasn't talking about the temple. He was talking about the house of Judah is left desolate. And so we're seeing this sadly play out in people like Doug and Joel and myself and others. We're trying our best, realizing there's still going to be this tension. There's still going to be this jealousy and this vexing, but we're trying to at least what we can do, get those two sticks as close to one another prior to Yeshua fully putting those two sticks back together.
And there will be 12,000 from 12 tribes during the 70th week. So obviously they're important, and except for Dan being replaced by Manasseh, they're all the same. So I do absolutely agree in part with what you're saying. Absolutely.
Well, there's only 12 gates in the New Jerusalem, and it ain't the Baptist, the Catholic, the Methodist, or any others. It's the 12 tribes of Israel.
Much of the Bible is God's redemptive love story with Israel. Absolutely.
Pretty much all of it. Yeah.
I mean, yes. No, I will say.
Pretty much all of it. I mean,
I would say, but not quite all of it. That's the only part I will say is I disagree with. It's not quite all of it, but the overarching theme. Yeah.
What part to be grafted in, though? Because think about Caleb. He was a Kenizzite. He was one of the mixed multitude that left Egypt. And yet here we have Caleb, who was placed into the tribe of Judah, even though his daddy had no Judah loins in him. He was not DNA Jew. And yet he was one of only two that gave a good report that got to enter the land. And you want to know what tribe? You want to know what tribe the other one was from? Want to guess? No. Ephraim.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeshua, Yehoshua, Jesus was the leader that led from the tribe of Ephraim that led Israel into the promised land. Caleb, the non-DNA Kenizzite Jew. And it's just, you see that it's not about DNA. To be Israel is not about just being
about
Jewish.
Believing in Jesus. And everyone who believes in Jesus will have place in kingdom. It
took us a while to connect these dots, so we get it,
So Revelation 12, Heather, there are different day and date counts. There are, 1,260 days. There's 42 months in chapter 11. There's a times and half a time. Why are we using different times? Why is it 1,260 days here in 12?
you understand that you are to count in 360-day years. I do believe.
So to remind you of the old ways, maybe? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure. Maybe, but I think
Okay.
Have you ever
ways specifically so that you draw the conclusion that you are supposed to count in 360-day years. And part of the confusion that comes in with identifying beginning and starting points of the 69 weeks of years, beginning, ending, that kind of stuff is people not using a 360-day year to count, counting by a year conversion rather than a day conversion. And I think that gives clarity to how we're supposed to measure them so that we arrive at correct conclusions. But that's just my.
Have you ever considered it that it's possible that Yeshua, God, will restore the calendar at the very end of the age for this final 3.5 year period back let me finish. Back to a 360-day year as it was at the time of Noah, because we know it was 30-day months, 5 months, 150 days. Have you ever thought about that possibility?
I would be surprised if that didn't occur.
Okay.
Do you realize what it takes for that to occur? Do you know the crustal shift that needs to occur to do that? It's not pretty.
Oh, yeah. I don't know all of the implications of all of the details and how that will work.
The physics are painful.
I mean, we operate on a 365-day calendar with leap years every 4 years. Or leap day every 4 years. And then the Jewish calendar is 354 with a
leap month.
And then somebody was mentioning the Essene calendar that was 364. I don't really know anything about that. And then you've got the 360 in, prophecy. And so I was like, well, God didn't make sure that people know how to do it when they need to know how to do it.
For you and your audience, if you ever look into looking at the time of Hezekiah around 701-ish BC, every ancient calendar, Egyptian, Sumerian, Akkadian, every ancient calendar went from 360 days to 365. They didn't know what to do with it. When Hezekiah, shadows don't move backwards for no reason. I really believe, based on that archaeological evidence, scripture, and all 14 known ancient calendars, all of a sudden going, what the heck are we going to do with these extra 5 days? That God, changed time. And again, I believe it could be that that's those signs in the heavens that one of those that might make men's hearts fail, that he restores it back to the perfect 360. We don't get a 360-degree circle just by coinkydink. Sure. There's a reason we don't have a 365.24, 0.25 circle. Mm-hmm. So again, I'm not dogmatic on that. I'm not dogmatic on a lot, other than I'm an Israelite.
All right. I being that it's going to be measured that way, and being that there is a vile judgment which gathers people to do battle against him, there's going to have to be some way that people understand specific times and what those allude to, what they equate to. How that winds up happening is beyond the scope of my knowledge, but we are given, I think, those 3 different ways of measuring to underscore the point that the 70th week is measured in 360-day years. So you're looking at 2,520 days with 1260 on either side of the midpoint.
So there's a war in heaven in the middle of chapter 12, and it seems to be the good guys versus the bad guys. The good guys are good angels. The bad guys are fallen angels, would you say?
Michael is the antagonist of that, which is fascinating because there is an appointed time for it. God says go, or someone says go time. The fascinating part to me about that is that Satan or the dragon and his angels are not the antagonist. There Michael is. Michael wars against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels war back, and there's no place found anymore for them. So that speaks all of appointed times. That says there's a day for this event in view, and on this day, Michael is going to say no more. They're going to be confined. And then Michael, per Daniel 12 and Revelation 12, is the wings of the great eagle that takes Israel into her place where she's going to be nourished for a time times half a time. So he not only casts down, but then he protects them as Satan tries to flee after them and wipe them out with the flood.
Do you think that's also 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, where it says that one will
be that restrains?
Yeah, that he'll restrain until he's taken out of the way. I used to think it was the Holy Spirit, but then I'm like, no, that doesn't make sense at all. I think it's actually Michael that is. I think Michael is removed by basically by
God's will.
Well,
Part of
it's
his
certainly God's
redemption
will,
plan.
yes, of course. But what I would suggest is that the apostasy, that's the same word as divorce. Okay, so you have a biblos
Forsake.
apostasio is a divorce certificate. All right, so I think that there is the break, and this is where I think that the people in Jerusalem, they're going to make the covenant with death per Isaiah chapter 28.
28. Yep.
They're going to make a covenant with death. And it's at that point that they basically give Michael the boot. Okay. They say, you know what? We're going to let this other guy, Satan, protect us. It's all, of course, the deception. But they're going to say, we're going to let Satan take care of us, deceived, of course. And then Michael's pretty much out of a job. And that's where he gets, because he's standing watch over your people.
He's not going to look after
That's so
me.
funny though that you say that way.
Yeah, I
Hey,
wouldn't
Doug,
state
I'm
it that
part of
way,
Israel
Doug.
too, though. He's going to like not help me now.
Okay, what are we reading? Departure, Desolation, Delusion?
This is in the Spotlight Volume 1. This was the 6th book I wrote. It was in 2017, and it goes through 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 12.
Okay.
So who's the dude in 2 verse 6? Yeah, who is it? Michael? Is it God's Spirit? What is it?
Moses. It's Moses.
Moses.
Yes. There are two times in the New Testament the word apostasia is used. The second one is in Acts 21:21 to describe the forsaking of Moses, what Paul taught the Jews to do when they had a big old problem.
Wow.
And,
it's forsaking. It's not necessarily forsaking Moses. It's forsaking
well, no, that's
any
what it said.
Oh,
that's
forsaking.
Yeah, in Acts 21:21, it's taught the Jews to forsake Moses. So what you're talking about in 2 Thessalonians 2 is he says 2 things that have to happen before Jesus returns at the second coming. One of them involves this a forsaking or an apostasy, and the other regards the abomination of desolation. So what prophecy in the Old Testament includes the abomination of desolation is one of 2 things that has to happen before Jesus returns at the second coming. Daniel 9:27. So you're talking about the falling away first is the cessation of the sacrifice and offering. It's a forsaking of Moses. It's a forced forsaking because it's caused to cease at the midpoint, different from what Paul taught them to do in Acts 21. But there's a forced cessation of sacrifice and offering, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So that's actually restated in verses 6 and 7. Now you know it withholdeth, restrains that he might be revealed in his time. So there's a restraining and then a revelation.
And who's restraining again?
Right. So that wicked should be let me bring this up.
Who do you believe the
I
restrainer
think we're
is?
not
What
too
Jill
far
says.
apart, honestly. I think we're really close because what
yeah,
I'm suggesting is that
she's quoting Moses.
Well, yeah, I'm suggesting that modern day Israel, led by the Jews, okay, they're going to make a covenant with death.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Now, so that would suggest that they're going to trade one covenant for a different covenant.
Yes.
And the covenant that they're currently in with God would be based on Moses. Okay.
Yeah.
And they're by deception, Satan's going to get them to sign this check here. Come sign this thing over here. Okay. And when they do that, that's what I'm saying, that Michael is out of a job, because Michael,
got it. Okay.
Whether they acknowledge it or not, Michael is standing watch over your people, right? And that he will do so until he's taken out of the way. Okay.
So that is so funny. That word means the exact opposite of the way that it's written. This chapter makes no sense to me in the way that that's written.
What's
that
word, 2 Thessalonians 2?
Yeah, that word taken out of the way means to come into being, to manifest, to come into the midst. That's talking about the revelation of the man of sin.
I would claim it's stand down, but you guys can argue.
I think it's stand down as well.
I'm pretty ignorant on Greek. All I can do is look at it.
Michael is a soldier. He's the top soldier.
Yeah. So
he takes commands from God and does them.
What it says is the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let restrain until he be taken out of the way. It's the Greek word to come into being, to come into the midst. So that's the revelation of the man of sin. Is when there is a cessation of sacrifices and offerings and the revelation of the man of sin via the abomination of desolation, the mystery is gone and iniquity is known, is understood by those events.
Do you know katakon very well? That's the Greek word.
Yeah.
I haven't studied it in a decade. Sorry.
was it Genetai or something like that?
Oh no, that's Janae. That is because the sex changes in terms of it's neuter with this particular thing. We'll call it. It's neuter, then it's masculine, and so we don't know if it's a male or a neuter or whatever. So that's why you could say it might be God's spirit, although God's spirit could
question
be
for you, Heather.
So I would say that that's the revelation of the man of sin via the abomination of desolation. I see verses 6 and 7 as a restatement of verses 3 and 4.
Yeah, so I don't think
That's
I need to
interesting.
come into being, but anyway, that's another.
Scott, what did you?
I was going to say, so you believe that, like, and you're in good company here with Doug and Joel. You believe that the sacrifices are going to be acceptable to God?
No, not at all.
Then how could
why they get judged?
Well, then you're not in covenant with us.
I agree. I agree with you based on Isaiah 66:3, which calls them abominations.
Swine's blood.
So how? No. What I'm saying is, how can the man of sin stopping abominations be the abomination of desolation then?
So I think you are looking at it through the lens of someone who knows that it's not the right thing.
Well, because Isaiah 66:3 says even a grain offering is like pig's blood on the altar.
Correct. Yeah, I think
so. But again, how could the man of sin stopping abominations be the abomination of desolation?
Because the people who will be doing those things don't view them as abominations.
Oh, I know that.
Right. That's the whole thing.
They're not abominations. Why would they be?
Yes, they are. Isaiah 66:3 says they are.
Because it fails to recognize Jesus being the final sacrifice for sin, and after him there is no other.
You've yet to address that verse. You just shake your head. You never actually deal with it. And I'm talking to Doug.
We'll have a show on that sometime. But Scott, when we have the show on that, we're going deep Hebrew. Okay, Doug's going to pull the Hebrew.
This is in the Spotlight Volume 2, The Nation Born at Once, and it goes through the chapter of Isaiah 66.
We can't read the title.
Yeah, that's okay. The Nation Born at Once.
Okay.
Hey, Heather, I would like to have you on sometime to discuss.
He's found somebody to agree with him on that one. Isaiah 66.
I would like to have you on to discuss Isaiah 66 verses 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and that child being born before tribulation. It relates to that Revelation 12 man-child, just so you know where I'm going.
That's at the end of it, because then his voice is heard from coming out of the temple, and he comes back to judge in a whirlwind.
He's happy now. He'll be quiet.
But yeah, that's actually fascinating, because I didn't intend to encounter. I didn't know I was going to encounter references to the temple. So it was with that chapter where I really delved into the third physical temple, what's going to be going on, a whole bunch of that, because he says, where is the house that you build unto me? Where is the place of my rest? Well, the place of his rest is Ezekiel's temple. And what goes on there is going to be what he considers abominations in verses 3 and 4. So
there you go.
Why would they be abominations? Because they're not supposed to be doing it. Because God doesn't have pleasure in the blood of bulls and goats, because they can't take away sins. Literally, the reason they get judged is because they resume a sacrifice that absents Christ. It rejects Christ as the final sacrifice for sin. So simply because someone causes them to cease does not nullify the fact that they're doing something that's wrong because they believe it to be right. I think there's a forced cessation, because otherwise they'd never stop. They'd never stop doing the wrong thing. So they're forced to stop, and then there are subsequent actions that facilitate the lifting of blindness and the salvation of Israel.
So then the two witnesses are possibly there, and the 144,000. So they're all sinning together. Then, I mean, if the sacrifices are evil, then those people are evil too, right?
Why do you think that they would be?
They're right there.
In them?
They'll be in Jerusalem.
Boy, this is a huge topic.
Yeah, see, that's why we'll have our own show on this.
40 through 48. There you have the restoration of sacrifices. Those are clearly not an abomination.
No,
they're blood sacrifices. I'm kind of
That's
talking
after
to Scott
Yeshua
here.
returns.
It's
You
the
know.
same terms, minkas,
But
kata.
it's still,
It's the-
okay, if God doesn't delight in sacrifice,
go offer your lamb, Doug. If you're so, go over there 3 times a year if you think you need to.
well, you're
I mean,
clearly,
go do your
clearly
grain
twisting
offering.
this,
Go
my
do your
friend.
It's
You're clearly
it's
twisting
not
this.
time yet.
Roll
Not
the
time yet.
dice.
It's not time yet.
I think you're talking about context. The context of the sacrifices
Ooh,
ongoing in the
yes.
70th week bear very much difference than the context of the sacrifices to go on in the kingdom.
According to Heather, we're all supposed to go to Israel on her birthday and celebrate. Well, that's kind of what you're saying. You know,
Awesome.
you're saying it could be this year on your birthday. And that would be the inspection day. So we will choose our lambs on that day. And
Well,
there you go.
I'm not
Oh my
bringing any
goodness.
lambs over there. I've got a lamb, and he's on the throne, and he's my high priest. So I don't need to go offer a lamb to an illegitimate high priest.
I'm not suggesting you should, Scott. That's
Well, if you don't think they're abominations, go over there.
We will have that show. Let's have some fun with Heather in the meantime. So
This is fun.
Hey, Heather, by the way, somebody
We will-
commented that they like you. You're feisty.
Yeah,
You're holding
yeah.
your own, and you're sweet.
she's
and
smart.
I hope I
I
haven't.
love Bible study. While I understand that people don't agree on everything, I just love talking about the Bible, and I don't think
Okay.
it can ever go
No,
wrong. with that.
you're awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
I
Okay,
should
so-
have been paying attention to chat. Gosh, there's a lot.
Yeah,
of
you
Oh,
should be.
yeah.
Go ahead and ignore my next question and
No,
check out
it
chat.
goes like
So
fast,
so
Heather.
basically, you're corresponding 12 with 14, and you're talking about the everlasting gospel, the 3 angels, things like that. It
Yeah.
should be midpoint-ish. What is the everlasting gospel?
So in that context, it is the mystery of God revealed, which is the life of Christ from birth to ascension.
But we already know that. I mean,
Yeah, we
I
know
don't need
that. We know that, but you're talking about it being revealed to a group of people who doesn't know and or believe that, who abjectly rejects that, and hence they're doing a bunch of sacrifices that are abominations to God. So
Okay.
what you're
Amen.
doing is you're basically
Wait,
creating
so-
a cutoff point in multiple ways, and you're saying we're going to stop doing what is abominable to God. It's going to be a forced stop. And you're going to have to make a choice between worshiping, fear God and worshiping Jesus, your creator, or worshiping the beast, his image, or receiving his mark. So basically, this is a point at which people have to. There is a forced choice here. There hasn't been forced choice up to that point. There is a forced choice at that point. And so that's what the 7th trumpet
So the
represents.
3 angels are kind of running around, blowing trumpets up in the sky. We're going to hear them. Will they be trumpets plus messages, or we'll just kind of know
Voices of
intuitively?
angels. Yeah, Revelation
okay.
8 tells you it's the voice, them sounding their own voices. The 7 angels, which have the 7 trumpets, are sounding their own voices.
So it's a tequila blast or salpingus in the Greek. But
Yep.
you're saying that long blast, not a staccato blast. It'll be a long blast, and that's also their voice. And the Hebrew would be a ruah.
Well,
Right,
talking
Doug?
about the angels that have the 7 trumpets
Yeah.
are sounding their own voices. The ones that fly through the midst of the heaven in Revelation 14.
Right.
Assumedly, that would be their own voices as well, but those are not the 7 trumpet, the angels with the 7 trumpets. They're
We
other,
have
yeah.
one section that kind of corresponds to this. That is Joshua 6, where they're marching around Jericho,
Mhm.
and sometimes they're blowing trumpets, and sometimes they're shouting, screaming. It
Okay.
depends on the time and the frame. But at the end, it's a scream. It's a ruah. And so you're saying that the angels might be blowing trumpets, but also possibly shouting.
Correct.
Okay, interesting.
Yep. And the reason why, there's no reason to suspect based on what we're told about angels having the voices of trumpet. They're given the voices. They're given the trumpets to sound. So they're given the voices of the judgments. But law in Exodus 19 was given by the voices of angels. It was just mediated by angels. We're told that in Acts 7:53, in Galatians 3, I want to say 18, and Hebrews 2 was given by the disposition of angels. So they have the voices of trumpets also.
And you did say Exodus 19. That's what I heard early on there. So you're saying it's kind of a trumpet or a shout situation on Mount Sinai, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, because it
Interesting.
says when the trumpet sounded long and waxed louder and louder, and God spake by a voice.
She's
And
Old
that's the
Testament
same voice
literate.
of Jesus is the voice of a trumpet, right? As if it were a trumpet, right? John
Okay.
says in Revelation chapter 1. So
Yes, heard behind me a voice of a great trumpet on the Lord's day. Yes, and then Revelation 4:1, heard a voice talking with him as a trumpet, saying, "Come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter." So Jesus has the voice of a trumpet. Angels have the voices of trumpets. There is a necessary distinction to make, which is why in 1 Thessalonians 4, you're told that Jesus descends from heaven with a shout with the voice of the archangel, not as an angel, the ruler over the angels. So there's no angel involved in that event.
Not to be nitpicky, but I love to be nitpicky. In Revelation 1:1, it's a semiano call. The voice behind him is a semiano, which would be a staccato type of a blast. It's 4591 in the Strongs.
Are you saying that Jesus has a stutter?
Wow, it's a rough crowd. So basically, because this is an unveiling of upcoming wars. I mean, it's wrath and things like that. I mean, that is 1:1. So it's a semiano, not a selpizzo or any of those types of calls, not the long blast. This is more like warning of a war coming.
It was like the best line of the whole night.
Yeah, there you go.
Jesus has a stutter.
Stutter, yeah. Well, Moses did. So there you go.
And Heather, sort of on that topic, that I think that's one reason why Doug and I, and probably Joel too, lean for a Yom Teruah return, because that was a day of shouting. Mm-hmm. And in Matthew 24 and in 1 Thessalonians, there is shouting, there is trumpets or shofars blowing. I used to be dogmatic on it until Steve Mutria made me think about Shavuot or Pentecost, and because then there was the sound of the shofar. There also, was the loud voice. So I've kind of modified it, and again, I can see, to your point, how just as Yeshua, I believe, fulfilled or partially fulfilled all 7 yearly high Moedim, all the high Sabbaths, I believe in his second coming, they could all factor in. Even though he was and is the Passover lamb, I can see how on unleavened bread, the first day of it or during the week of it, major events, prophetic events could come forth during a future unleavened bread season or during a future Shavuot. And obviously during a Yom Teruah, Yom Kippurim, and Sukkot.
Well, in Kingdom, Ezekiel 45 tells us that they will be celebrating, the Jews in the land will be celebrating unleavened bread and
I'd say the Israelites.
Unleavened bread and tabernacle.
Israelites, not Jews.
I hope it's Israelites.
Well, so it makes a distinction between people of the nations and people of the land, because Zechariah says all who are left of the nations.
That's what I'm saying is those will be Israelites. Judah at that point in time is one tribe.
True.
Sure.
And they're all called Israel.
Well, okay. So distinction made in Ezekiel 45 and Zechariah 14. Because in Zechariah 14, it specifically says those who are left of the nations will go to Jerusalem annually to worship the King and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles.
Yep.
Contrasting to Ezekiel 45, which is talking about physical people in Israel, the ones who are doing the sacrifices, that have relationship to the temple, things like that. There's 3 words that are named for them.
So the 4 of us,
term thing. In other words,
I know. So the 4 of us are Americans, right? I live in the best state, Colorado. Okay. But not all Americans are Coloradans, and I'm glad. Please don't come here. Okay, go to Michigan or some other
Alabama.
place. Yeah, Alabama. Go there. All right. So we're all Americans, but we all come from a different state. And so when we talk about the Jews, it's kind of like they're from Michigan. Okay, for example. And
Michigan's not a great state. They don't want to be from here.
In any event, it was what we're saying though is that if Israel is sort of like America, then the Jews or Judea would be like a state. Okay. And of course it gets confusing because the whole place is called Israel, but then you also have the house of Israel versus the house of Judah. So the nomenclature is a real pain in the butt. All right. And but once you see it, you'll be like, oh, and you can't unsee it. Okay.
How could I not have seen this? No, for 48 years, I was blind as a bat to this. I had no clue.
And it answers so many of these questions that we have, such as Romans 9, 10, and 11, specifically talking about
natural
the fullness of the Gentiles, that Israel was blind in part. Again, I used to think, like Scott, that it was the Jews who couldn't see, but I couldn't see just fine, And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm blind as well. So it doesn't change all of your eschatology, but it's going to give some nuances. It'll be like, oh, that's really cool.
Well, blindness in part has happened to Israel because until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in, it was cast because they knew not the time of their visitation. Luke 19 talks about that. It was one of the curses poured out upon Israel. Why Luke later says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Or Jesus in Luke is stated to say that because he cast blindness over them. And Romans 11 says, even now there remaineth a remnant according to the election of grace, and the rest are blinded. So I wouldn't say any of you guys qualify as that. I would say that unbelieving Israel, who was part of rejecting Jesus, and the curses that they accepted upon them and their children, may his blood be upon us and upon our children. Those are the ones that he would.
Unbelieving Judea. Unbelieving Judea.
Still in the house of Israel being partially blinded to the fact that Jesus is the same. Yesterday, it was him talking to Moses. Today and tomorrow, if we read Isaiah 66, he's not happy with meat and swine eaters when he returns. He's not.
No, actually, he's not. You're correct.
He's not real happy. This is Jesus, sweet, loving Jesus that supposedly declared all foods clean. All foods were already clean. Jesus made them clean when he told Moses what was clean and not clean. He didn't change.
It's not what goes into the mouth that defiles a man, but what comes out of the mouth
but
that
that's
defiles
about
a man.
the
Out of the mouth flows
tradition of hand washing.
Yeah.
No,
we digress.
I get it.
So Heather, real quick, let's try to finish out chapter 12.
All
So
right.
let's read the last couple of verses of 12, which is, then the dragon was angry with the woman, whatever the woman is. Hopefully you'll cover that. But
Israel.
Continue. Okay,
It's
Israel.
the remnant of Israel.
All right.
We agree.
There you go. They're happy now. See, happy dance. So then angry with the woman and went off to make war with the rest of her children. Who are the rest of her children?
The ones who didn't flee. So remnant is a small part. And I think this is where, and I've kind of been talking about this on my own channel, because there is, when we talk about the remnant fleeing, I think that there is a thought that that's all of Israel. And so Israel is going to be emptied out. Well, remnant's a small part. Not everyone is going to flee, whether they see it and choose not to flee, whether they don't see it and don't flee. But I believe there's going to be a very small window of time, which emphasizes Jesus's warning and says, when you see this, leave.
So you're in Matthew 24 now and Luke 21, get out of Dodge.
Exactly. Okay. So he says, when you see this, leave. So there's going to be people who do, and there will be people who don't. And I think this is the import of understanding or trying to understand what day that's going to occur on and linking it to Tishri 10, because there's significant impact there.
But they don't want to run on Tishri 10. That's Yom Kippur. We don't run on, we don't drive our cars. We don't do anything.
So that's him saying, I put away your law. You're still following it to your detriment. And it will be a physical detriment at that time.
But he does talk about law in the next sentence here. So with the rest of the seed, it's seed there, of her, and the ones keeping the commands of God and hold the testimony of Jesus. What does that mean?
The commandments of God is fear God and worship him.
Okay.
Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. The second,
so you're doing the 10
love
commandments.
Your neighbor as yourself. Well, no, it's Jesus said when he was asked, what's the greatest commandment in the law? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength boils down to believe in Jesus Christ to be saved. I mean,
I would say Deuteronomy gives much more specific.
It does. You're absolutely right. It does. But I'm saying in the context of Revelation, where you have an angel saying, fear God and worship Jesus, that's what that's going to equate to, is keeping the commandments of God is to fear God and worship Jesus, which then says, and keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ.
I'd say it's the both and. In other words, I believe
that there is going to be more significance to that. Yes. I'm just talking about in the context of Revelation. That's what the command is to fear God and worship Jesus, the creator.
And Heather, just for your audience, because I know a lot of this is new, I'm assuming when you say Israel, you're teaching about, you're saying that that's the Jews, correct?
Correct.
Okay. When we're saying Israel, we are including the Jews 100% and the entire body of Messiah.
I am not.
I know you aren't, but I'm just saying, just for your audience, if events unfold,
sure,
and they're still here
on her birthday, on her birthday, you don't want to miss your birthday.
Look,
that's funny. No, I understand. I understand.
I want to be serious right now. I want to be serious. Okay. If these events do start to unfold and you find yourself still here and things get really, really bad, again, I pray you remember this conversation. It is not replacement theology. We are placed into Israel. We are grafted into that. There's only one olive tree in Romans 11.
Yeah.
And I encourage everybody to go read Jeremiah 11, 16, and 17 and note that prophecy is written to both the house of Judah and the house of Israel. There's a reason both are mentioned. The new covenant is only made to and with both the house of Judah and the house of Israel. So my heart and my concern, because I do believe we're coming towards the end of this age.
Oh, I see.
Okay, my heart and my
so, yeah.
concern for those is if they are not harpazoed away or whisked away and they find themselves still here, do not lose faith. Okay, in other words, stay with the plan, get in the word. So that's my heart, is not to win an eschatological debate.
Sure.
I would love to be incorrect and us get raptured, harpazoed out of here before this time. I don't believe it's going to happen, except maybe for a very, very small remnant. And I don't include myself in
but Scott, it wasn't Jeremiah 11, it was Jeremiah 31.
No, it's Jeremiah 11, 16, and 17, where Israel is called a green olive tree.
Oh, there.
And it specifically mentions that there are branches broken off. So Paul is not making up new metaphors when talking about the olive tree. And he talks about the wild olive tree for a reason. That's why in Romans 9, to the nations, he actually specifically applies not my people to all nations. The only time Yah ever calls someone not his people is in Hosea 1, when he is addressing only the house of Israel, not the house of Judah. And he calls them not my people. I am not your husband. I will show Judah mercy. Judah remained in covenant, unlike the house of Israel. They were divorced, scattered. Hosea 8:8 says they were swallowed up by the nations. And I want everybody to see this, because again, read Revelation 2 and 3, and it's my Christian brother, my mama, all my Christian brothers and sisters. The only thing I promise you for y'all, the only thing, we are not legalists. The only thing that's changed about our faith is we rest on Sabbath. We honor the feast of Jesus that he created on day 4, and we don't eat certain things, and that's it. I mean, other than that, there's not much difference between the three of us and Heather. I mean, and again, this is not something that anybody's casting stones at the other, but when it comes to this eschatology, once you see your Israel, then you're starting to apply a lot of these passages in Hosea.
And say, I would say I'm an adopted son of Abraham. I would not call myself Israel. I would call myself an adopted son of Abraham.
Okay.
Close enough.
You're in the house.
The dragon.
I am in kingdom. Yes.
You're in the house.
My permanent kingdom citizenship has been obtained. I just haven't gotten there yet.
Amen.
We neither have we.
That's how I would say
the dragon took his stand on the sand of the seashore. What's going on there?
That is the same thing as rising up out of the sea, is the same thing as ascending out of the bottomless pit. You have
so that's the busso, you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's so you have, there's
it's another
entirely
chart.
different conversation. But that's end of 6th trumpet. That's the time when the beast rising up out of the sea is the same thing as ascending out of the bottomless pit. And then he's given his power. He's given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies in verse 5, which is the abomination of desolation. He's given power to continue 40 and 2 months, open his mouth and blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, them that dwell in heaven. And then there's a beast 2 that comes out, which is your false prophet. So that's, definitely. He ascends trumpet 6, which is what Revelation 11 shows. And then he's given that power to continue, which is your second half of the 70th week.
So you're linking Revelation 9 with Revelation 12, the end of 12.
Revelation 9 names who he is, names where he is.
The king angel of the Abuso.
Correct. Apollyon, the destroyer.
Apollyon.
Yes.
Okay. We finished 12.
Hey.
Yeah.
Bravo.
There you go.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Very good.
So I just, there's
So
a lot.
You think the dragon and the beast are intimately related, and they both come out of the abyss, or how do you see that?
No, the dragon's just another name for Satan. Revelation 20 tells us that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who comes out of the abyss?
Who comes out of the abyss? Oh, probably. So trumpet 6 is all about the releasing of angels at appointed times. So you've got 4 angels bound in the great river Euphrates, set for an hour and a day and a month and a year for to slay the third part of men. You've got the beast who ascends out of the bottomless pit at a specific appointed time for the purpose of overcoming and killing the 2 witnesses, and then, being given that power to continue. So you've got your beast 1 and beast 2, and we're kind of introduced to beasts anyway in Revelation 4 throne room. It's the cherubim, the beast, the 4 beasts around.
Oh,
the
you
throne.
think those beasts are those beasts?
No. What I'm saying is the beast.
Whoa.
No. The beast imagery or the beast language refers to angels.
Coyote, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you've got your angel of the bottomless pit, who is your beast 1. Your false prophet, probably by deductive reasoning, would also be an angel loosed out of the bottomless pit at that time. Your 2 legs of iron, and then your feet of iron and miry clay. Your 10 kings are probably angels also. So
what if they're hybrids? What if they're?
I have heard that presented.
That's him.
And I have heard that presented. I know. I don't believe that they are, specifically because he's called the angel of the bottomless pit. And there would be no reason to suspect he'd be a hybrid because he's stated to be an angel. So I have heard that. I have absolutely heard that. I simply wouldn't share that opinion.
Okay.
But yeah, I've heard it lots.
Awesome. Well, thank you. This was really fun.
You did great.
Yeah.
Thanks. I had fun.
Yeah.
Hope I didn't make you guys too angry.
That was great.
No.
No.
They were great. They were nice.
Oh, Heather, I was very nice to you compared to some.
Oh, they have not been nice to all of the guests that I've chosen, So Heather, how do we find you? How do people find you other than everybody that loves you?
So I have my YouTube channel. It's called Heather R. It's not very creative, but that's my name. I have a website where all of the full text of all of my books is housed in PDF, and all of my charts are there also. It's heatherrivard.academia.edu. And I have a contact button on there, so it gets sent to my email, and just the research is available. And then in the links of my videos on my page, I have the links to the Amazon also. But I would never tell people to buy my books. Go read the free ones.
That's awesome.
Go buy them.
No, go read the free ones.
I sat there in the morning and typed in an email to her, and she called me within minutes. It's kind of cool.
I do respond very quickly.
You do? It's like 5 seconds. Who's this?
I do, because if I don't, I'll forget, and then I'll feel really bad. But yes, my channel is Heather R, and I have nearing 1,300 videos. I just like to teach. I like to talk about the Bible. I like to talk about Jesus. I mean, ultimately, he's the reason for everything. So,
amen.
I think
we are 110% on that one.
Yeah.
Winner.
Yep. We totally agree. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
This was really fun.
Yes.
It was fun.
Awesome.
Please come back. We'll pick a topic that the 2 of us agree on and they disagree on.
Sounds like a plan to me.
That way you'll have a trained lawyer assassin on your team.
There you go.
I always wanted to be a lawyer, but it didn't work out.
Unfortunately.
So.
All right.
Moved.
Well, thank you all so much.
We're gonna say goodbye. Goodbye, everybody. We're so glad that you joined us. It was really a lot of fun. And until next time.